Hey friend, this is the podcast you've been expecting, a dating toolbox to guide you through dating and relationships.
We are your hosts, the handsome mutant and the crazy Venezuelan girl. Stay tuned to laugh as we share our own experiences.
Welcome back, friend. Thank you so much for joining us today. We have with us our friend Patrick. Introduce yourself, Patrick.
Hey, my name's Patrick Roof. I'm from Bluffdale, Utah. I'm 21 years old, and I like to party. And that's
You can't like to party. I like to party.
Oh man, my bad. Nah, Lane's the only one that parties. Nah, yeah, that's true. No, but I play the guitar, and yeah, that's about it. That's what I like.
Patrick
Awesome.
is just giving like a dating app bio right here.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's literally just
put it
copied
in
from
your-
Mutual. Yeah.
Swipe right if you're interested in Patrick.
I forgot the office quotes though to put on there, like every Mutual bio. Oh my gosh.
Thank you so much for joining us, man. It's an honor to have you on the show. Today, we're going to be talking about communication, the importance of communication in relationships. This is actually a question that was submitted to us by one of you, one of our friends out there who listens to the podcast regularly. Thank you so much for submitting the question. We actually have more of these episodes coming up with other questions that have been submitted to us. So keep them coming. If there's a question that you want to learn more about or something that you want us to discuss here on the show, send it to us at our email and or our Instagram DMs. We'll link that in the bottom of the episode. But today, like I said, we're talking about communication. And so Allie kind of has some things that she brought up. Again, I know I do this to you every episode, but let us know what do you think, Allie? What are some things you think are important about communication?
Well, communication is just such a broad topic to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
I think there is so much to talk about communication when you are in a relationship, when you get engaged, when you get married. But I think I want to just start with how important communication is when you first start dating. Why is it important that you build a good communication with that person and how that influences your relationship later on. Mm-hmm. So what are you guys' thoughts on that?
One of the most important things about communicating and why it relates to a relationship is if you can't tell the other person about yourself and open up to them, then there's no way that you're going to be having a sustainable relationship with that person. And a good relationship has give and take for everything, love, criticism, communication, like personal experience. There's a lot of give and take that happens in a relationship. And I know that a good, healthy relationship is based on good communication as at least one of the more important factors. If you never tell each other what your expectations are, if you never tell each other about your background, if you aren't able to be honest with each other, then going forward is going to be way harder.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I think especially communication is pretty important to know kind of what the other person is expecting off the get-go. You guys might have mentioned that kind of thing before, but like, for example, if you're not trying to be very serious with someone, kind of like telling them that, or if you're interested in a serious relationship, that expressing that with them is how you're going to pretty much not waste time dating mm-hmm. them if that's not what they're interested in as well. Mm-hmm. But also like just being open with someone from the start is probably the best way to set up.
I actually have a good example on that. I was kind of dating somebody. We had gone on a couple dates, and in my mind, I thought we are in a relationship. We are seeing each other. And that happened to me multiple times, actually. But in my head, because I wasn't communicating my thoughts and my feelings, I assumed the other person was feeling the same way. And like multiple times, like 3 times, when things started getting in my head a little bit more serious, I wanted to talk about those things, and the other person was not feeling the same way. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it was just so heartbreaking. After 3 months, you're getting to know somebody. You have not talked to them about
where it's going
or anything. And then 3 months into you investing in a relationship, you're like, you know what? Yeah, mm-hmm. I don't like you in the same way. It's really hard. So to avoid any miscommunication, to avoid any heartbreak and pain, you got to communicate how you feel and what your expectations are.
Mm-hmm. And granted, I think it is something that's pretty hard, because I've also been in positions where I'm like, I don't like this person. I should probably tell them I don't, and I can see that they're more invested in me, and I'm like, I'm gonna be wasting their time if I don't tell them, and that's something you kind of just have to get good at in order to be a good communicator. And because I'm very non-confrontational, so that kind of thing just scares me, right?
Patrick's going to get married, and then 20 years later, he'll be like, hey, this isn't working out. Like,
I should have told you.
I should have told you, like, before I proposed.
From the day I met you, I knew this wasn't going to work out. I just was going with it. No, so yeah, that's something that personally I'm working on as well, and but also expressing how I feel with certain people that way.
I want to go back to something that Ali said about investing too much in a relationship before you really know where the other person is. One example I have of us avoiding that in our relationship, it was funny because like even after I think it was like maybe a week and a half or 2 weeks of seeing each other, I remember we had a conversation. It was small, like it wasn't super big, but I don't know who brought it up, but we basically just asked each other if we liked seeing each other and if we wanted to keep seeing each other. It wasn't really like a define the relationship, but we were just kind of like, how do you feel about us going on dates and hanging out? Like, is it good? Like, are you having fun? And she was like, yeah, like I'm having fun. Like, I want to get to know you more. I like the relationship. And I was like, yeah, like I can see this continuing, And we, like I said, we didn't decide to date officially yet, but it was like a week or two into seeing each other. And we're like, do we want to keep seeing each other? Yeah. And I think that's important.
Yeah, when we decided to actually make it official, first of all, like never asked me officially to be his girlfriend.
But we're married now. Why are we?
I'm still waiting for that question. I'm kidding. But no.
In front of all our friends, Ali, will you be my girlfriend?
Yes.
Thank you.
Right on.
It's a funny story because I think that when you communicate those things, you kind of have to be straightforward.
That's true.
With people. If you want to date them, you want to date them. If you don't, you don't. Yeah. I really hope this person is not listening to this right now. But the previous relationship I had right before Lane, I met this guy. He was really nice. We talked for a couple weeks and we decided to make it official, right? But in that moment, I knew I was not going to marry that guy. Mm-hmm. Like I felt like I wasn't going to marry him. And it was so bad of me. Like I tried to communicate that, but I think I was like beating around the bush, and I don't think he got it, but I wasn't feeling the same way he was feeling. And this is another thing. When we spoke and he said, this is how I feel, blah, blah, blah. I kind of said, I don't think I feel the same way. And he said, well, if you leave this house and you don't tell me that you want to be my girlfriend, then like I will give you a second chance. And guess what I did?
You gave him you stayed?
Yeah.
Oh no.
I didn't communicate.
You can see Patrick's face.
I really hope this person is not listening to this, but I didn't communicate how I felt in that moment. Well enough.
You weren't as straightforward as you maybe should have been, right?
And so this person, it lasted like 2 weeks because I knew I did not want that relationship. But I should have been straightforward from the beginning, and I would have, saved that person some time, some money, I would have saved that person from a heartbreak.
Some emotional pain, yeah.
Yes, I'm pretty sure he probably had. So I think that when it comes to relationships, you got to be honest. You got to be straightforward. This is how I feel. Because those things you carry into a relationship later on. If you don't communicate certain things when you are first dating, like, I don't share the same ideas about religion, or I don't share the same ideas about politics. And or you kind of just like, beat around the bush. You don't want to really touch those basic
you don't
topics.
Want to be confrontational.
Yes, you bring that into your relationship because later on you will have to talk about those things.
Right. It's just procrastinating.
Yeah. And so that's my biggest advice when it comes to, that's a foundation. If you don't have a good foundation in communication when you first start dating, you're going to carry on that into your relationship.
No, but also I really like the story you shared, Lane, as far as like, I mean, you guys had just started seeing each other, but it was like you, without being super committal or anything, you still established like, hey, do you want to go on more dates? Pretty much. And it's like, yeah, okay, cool. And that's good. That way you're not like asking her out on dates and she's like, I don't want to see this guy again. Like, yeah, that's cool. I think that's a good idea.
When we became an actual couple, like when we started dating for real, we kind of did this thing. It was like unofficial, like we didn't schedule it, but almost every week we would ask each other, like, how's our relationship doing? Is there anything that we're lacking in? Is there anything that we can do better? Is there anything that we're doing well? And it kind of just started as just like a follow-up, like we started dating. And then it was like once a week, her or I both would bring it up and be like, hey, like, how am I doing? Or how are we doing? How's the relationship? How do you feel? Do you want to keep dating? Some people feel like they're forcing it if they're always kind of asking and following up and seeing how the other person feels. But I think there's a way to do it where you're not needy and a way to do it where you're not like pushy. It's just kind of like, how do you feel about the way things are going? And then you just kind of leave it open and then the person can say whatever they want.
And I think that's part of where it's coming from. Because I think if it was going to be really needy, it's coming out of worry, out of like, so, and the fact that both of you were doing that is because it's something that you're trying to contribute to your relationship surviving, and it's not so much of like your relationship's already doomed.
Exactly.
And you're trying to, I don't know, I just, but like best case scenario, the communication should be equal between both people. I think it's almost kind of a warning sign for the good communicator. Yeah. If the other person doesn't communicate at all, there's probably something that, I mean, maybe not something they're hiding, but like something they're not expressing themselves fully. So
I want to actually add another story on about Ali and I early in our relationship. I remember, I think it was 2 or 3 dates in, maybe 4. It was within our first week of dating. We went on a date. I was over at her house. We were hanging out. When I left, I gave her like a little kiss going out the door. It wasn't like a makeout or anything, but it was just a small kiss because we'd been seeing each other for a week, but I liked her and I didn't want to kiss her on the first date. I didn't want to be that guy. But to be honest, I kind of couldn't handle it anymore at this point. I just wanted to give her a smooch. And so I gave her a little kiss and I left. And I mean, I could tell that she was feeling it as well. But then the next time that I came to hang out, we were just listening to music. We were talking. She was teaching me how to dance because she's really good at dancing and I don't know anything. And then when we were dancing together, I felt like she was giving me the signs, that I should put on the moves again. And so I leaned in for the kiss and she kind of like swerved. It wasn't like a big dip, but she like swerved. And I mean, but we were dancing. And so I was kind of like, oh, like maybe, and I was subtle about it. Like I wasn't pushy. So I was like, oh, maybe she didn't realize that I, wanted to kiss her again. And so like we danced a little bit more and it wasn't awkward. Like it was fine. And then, man, I really, really thought she wanted me to kiss her. And so I went in for a second kiss. But this time it was more like she could tell that I wanted to kiss her, right? And then she obviously swerved me. And I was like, oh, dang, I just got curved, bro. And I mean, I wasn't hurt, but I was just like, okay. Like, I mean, we had a small kiss the other night, but maybe she wasn't as invested as I thought. And so we kind of stopped dancing and we were talking later. And we were just hanging out. Like, we moved past it, And while we were talking, we were just sitting on the ground and she said, hey, like, I want to say something about that kiss that you tried to do. And I was actually shocked that she was bold enough to like bring it out and be straightforward about it. But like, do you remember what you said, babe? Like, what did you say to me?
I was kind of seeing somebody else that I had met before I met Lane. And this person wasn't being super honest about where he was at the moment. And so he was seeing other people and I was seeing other people. But I enjoyed spending time with him and I had kissed him before. And so I didn't want to be physical with 2 people at the same time. Like I knew I
You're a strong woman, just so you know.
Thanks, Dave. Respect that. Resisting the temptation of late nighting. I'm kidding.
No, I mean, you had 2 guys who were willing to kiss you and you didn't want to do that. Like that's admirable.
yeah, and so I told Lane, I like you. I think you're fun to be around, and I want to keep seeing you. But I have been seeing somebody else, and I don't want to be physical with two guys. So I kind of have to
choose one, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, get myself together, and think, where this relationship is going and where I'm at with the other person. And so that's exactly what I told you. And
yeah. And I think it was awesome because I don't know if Patrick brought this up earlier, but just kind of telling the person, where you're at. And of course, this is before we actually were in an official relationship. But the fact that she was able to tell me straightforward after kind of rejecting my kiss, like, why? You know what I mean? I feel like a lot of people just kind of would have left it. Right. And then the guy would have gone home and been like, God dang, she just like played me. Crap, I would have felt like an idiot.
I'm really confused too, because you wouldn't have known, like, why'd she swerve that? Because like you said, you thought she wanted you to.
And she had kissed me before.
And
so
maybe it was obvious and maybe it wasn't, or, So yeah, I think by her explaining to you kind of what was going on, that helped you not feel like, like a turd for being rejected.
Like total scrub.
Exactly.
But like, and then the other thing too is that, so when she told me that, I kind of understood. I was like, okay, like you want to make sure that you know what you want. You want to make sure that you're not leading someone on. That's a good thing. One of my previous relationships, not the one right before Allie, but a few before I had met her, I was dating a girl who was not super upfront about where she wanted the relationship to go and how she felt about things. And so I had already been in a situation with her where her and I were doing things like we were dating, like kind of we were seeing each other. But at the same time, she still said she had feelings for this other guy. She wanted to see this other guy too. And so I explained that to Allie when she mentioned this too, that I was like, because I mean, at first I didn't quite understand what she really meant by like, I'm seeing this other guy, so I kind of have to figure out some stuff. And so I was like, well, like, just so you know, like, I don't have a problem if you like another guy, but just like tell me if you don't want to keep seeing me in like a relationship kind of way, because I mean, if you want to see me, then like, let's keep seeing each other. But if you like this other guy, then like, just do it, So I was kind of upfront, and I told her about my previous experience. And so she knew where I was coming from too. Like, it's not like I was coming out of nowhere with this thing where it's like, oh, well, it's either me or nothing, Yeah. But I told her where I was coming from and kind of what I expected from our relationship.
Communication has to go both ways. Like, a person can be really good at communicating, but if the other person does not want to open up, there's no way you're going to get words out of their mouth. It's just, it is what it is. And I think that goes back also to the fact that so many people, when they first start dating others, they either want to be good at communication or they ghost people. Like, instead of, if you know it's going to be a positive outcome, then you're like super excited and you sometimes over communicate. And when you don't see things going a good way, then you stop communicating. And I feel like it's so crazy, but people don't know how hard it is to not know what the other person is thinking when you start dating, when you are in a relationship, because most people overthink. And so when the other person is not communicating how they feel, you kind of have this play in your mind that everything is wrong, and because you don't know what's going on. And so when two people are good at sharing with others, or the person they're dating or they're in a relationship with, how they feel, it's just so much easier, and the relationship is just so much smooth.
And I think two of the biggest things I've kind of taken from that is to not be afraid to just say things, and not overthink it. Like, whether or not someone wants you to say something or wants you to try and express your feelings, just do it anyway. Like,
yeah, just
like what do you have to lose, really? If they reject you, then you wasted less of your time by expressing yourself and kind of putting yourself out there and not overthinking things. And that's kind of the story of my life, is just don't overthink things. You still have to think, kind of, but you don't want to You don't want to overthink and
And you don't want to put thoughts in the other person's head. You know, I think when you think too much about it, then you start to assume, oh, they must be thinking this, they must want this, but you don't know because you didn't ask them. Like,
exactly.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that I feel like any form of affection or nonverbal communication should not replace
actual words.
actual words.
Yeah.
Because you can do whatever you want, but the other person might not understand it the same way you're thinking about it.
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
I'm a very affectionate person. I love and I hug everyone.
Touch and hug. And,
Yeah, I hug everyone. I see people in the street, first time I meet them, and I hug them. But for some people, hugs are like a very
Affectionate
affectionate.
thing.
Yeah. And for me, it's more like, oh, like, you're so nice. I just want to show you that, like, I like you. I listen to you.
One thing, because I think that we've been talking a lot about communication, about like what we want and where we stand, and like before you're actually in a relationship. True. But how do you think communication changes in like the type of communication and in the, I guess, quality of communication when you're actually in a relationship with somebody? So like you're dating, you know each other, hopefully. Like how does communication change?
Oh, communication changes a lot. I mean, just put it out there. When you first started dating, you were in that honeymoon stage. You were so in love and blah, blah, blah. And you actually want to talk to the person a lot more because you want to get to know them quickly and you want to get that relationship going, right? Once you are in a relationship, you don't have you kind of show your true self. I don't want to just like, but it's true. You kind of show your true self, and you have things to do. You have probably school, work. You have family. You have other things that you need to do. Of course, your relationship is important. Yeah. But you won't be texting or calling or sharing ideas as often as you would when you were first dating, and you gotta be okay with that. The other person is their own person, their own individual, and they also have their things to do. So communication changes in that way. It also opens up a broader spectrum of things that you need to talk about.
Yeah.
When you are in a relationship, you want to see if that person is actually going to be able to be a good spouse or whatever, right? And so you want to start talking about topics like finance, or you want to start talking about topics like, what is your idea on abortion, or what is your perspective on raising our kids? Like, how do you want to raise kids? And so
the topics become less fun. I
Yeah.
don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. Don't leave the honeymoon phase. Just stay
just
there.
stay there.
That's what I'm doing. I'm just kidding.
And so first the topics change. And I also think that you get more comfortable on how you talk to the person, which is, it can be good and it can be bad. You shouldn't be mean ever. But I feel like sometimes when you get into a relationship, the person actually feels like, we are already in a relationship. Yeah. So I kind of...
Maybe they get like less careful.
Yeah.
It's like sometimes because before when you're just getting to know somebody, you don't want to say anything wrong. Like you don't want to say something that will offend them. You don't want to say something that will hurt their feelings. But like you said, when you're in an actual relationship or when you're married or whatever, you kind of are less careful about the way you say things. You might come across as more harsh than you intended. You know what I mean?
True, yeah.
And also I feel like a lot of people are really good listeners when they first start dating because you actually want to pay attention to what they're saying. But once you're in a relationship, a lot of people just kind of
stop listening.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Nah, I don't know. The only thing I can really contribute from what I feel is probably that, like, there's the golden rule, right?
Treat others the way you want to be treated.
Exactly.
That was a paraphrase.
You just always want to think about how whatever you're saying or whatever you're doing is affecting
the other person.
The other person, no matter how much you already know them.
Something that you brought up, Ellie, that I think is key is that I think part of communication is not just your words and the way that you say things and do things, but also your listening skills. When you listen to somebody and you actually use what they tell you, you're communicating that you care about them and that you care about like what they're saying. I know that this is something that's important to me, I guess, is that like I like to know that when I talk, that the person is valuing what I'm saying. And like sometimes it will hurt my feelings if I feel like, oh, I'm talking to this person, but they're not listening. They're not like responding. They're not using the information that I give them. And so just as big as saying what you feel is also listening to what the other person is telling you. Another thing that I want to say about communication in an actual relationship that Allie and I talked about the other day is that kind of what she was saying, when you first start dating somebody, you are focused completely on them. So when you go to see that person, you have everything else done. Like you're not worried about school, you're not worried about work. So when you go to see them, they're the whole focus of your attention. But when you become in a committed relationship, or if you're married or something like that, living together or whatever, now all of a sudden, when you're with them, you're not always with them being the center of attention. Like we live together now, Allie and I, and so a lot of like the majority of our interaction is, oh, like Allie is studying and doing her online classes, or Lane is taking calls for work, or we're making food because like we have to eat because we're hungry, you know?
Right.
So it's like less about, it becomes less of a, I'm here just for you, you know, like you were when you were dating. And it's more of like we're together now, so now we have to figure out how to communicate consistently and just kind of like live in each other's space. I don't know if that makes sense.
Of like balancing all the stuff you got.
I feel like even though that's reality, you gotta still make time to talk and to connect with the person you're with, because lives get busier and busier, and you got to make sure that if you want to be in a relationship, you are dedicating time to talk, to communicate, and to connect with the person you're with.
And it's important to check up on your partner. You know what I mean? There's one thing I want to say about this is that if you notice that there's something wrong with your partner, it's good to ask them, like if there's anything that's bothering them. I'd say like maybe don't pressure them. I'm kind of bad at this. Like if I feel like something is wrong, I kind of insist that something is wrong. So I'm like, hey babe, like what's up? And she's like, oh, nothing, like it's good. I'm like, oh, yeah, but seriously, like what's up? Because I know that that's a lie. You know? And I think there's a fine line between being too pushy and letting them know that you're there to talk to them. So be concerned and ask them how they're doing. And like you said, make time to have real communication. But I think that, like we said before, the other person does need to feel comfortable and able to open up and say things, because I can't read your mind. You know, if something is not going well, or if you're lacking something, or if I'm hurting your feelings somehow, like it's good for you to come out and tell me straightforward, but you need to be able to have a conversation, you know. Never, this is one thing I think is important about communication, is you should never blame the other person directly for a problem that you're having, because it takes both of you to work through it. And so like, let's say I'm not giving Allie enough time during the day. She shouldn't just be like, wow, our relationship is suffering because you're not doing this for me. You know what I mean? But it should be like, hey, Lane, I feel like we haven't been communicating so well, or we haven't been spending enough time together, or we haven't been going on dates as much, and I think that it's affecting our relationship. And then it's like, oh, well, okay, like, what do you think we can do better? And then you have an actual conversation. So don't accuse the other person of being negligent. Don't put the blame on them, but just bring it to them in a way that you can actually talk about it.
Yeah.
And I feel like don't come to a conversation feeling like you want to have a big fight.
Yes.
Or like, you know what I mean? You want to get your
throw
point
hands.
across,
Exactly.
burn the house down. I think that you have to make sure that when you come to have a conversation with the person you're with, you are going to have a good discussion, not just that.
And don't let the problem go until it's a big problem. Like address it as soon as you see it's a problem.
It also just boils inside and then you explode.
Yeah. You know how many times that happens at work, at school? Like you don't have to, you don't want to do that at home.
No.
And you're going to communicate how you're feeling way better when you're not angry. You know, like if you're not angry about it yet, but if you noticed it and you're like, oh, I kind of don't like that, you can bring it up to the person soon and be like, hey, like this isn't a big problem. This isn't a big issue, but just so you know, I don't really feel comfortable with this, or I don't feel good about that, or I feel like we can work on this thing. But if you let it go for like a month and you don't say anything, by the time you bring it up, you're going to be a wreck and you're going to be angry. You know what I mean?
Oh, man.
And when something like that happens, my biggest advice is do not raise your voice and do not say bad words. Because I mean, you're gonna have big discussions with the person you're with. That's not
A weird thing.
Yeah, is true. You will have things that you disagree with, but just don't raise your voice and say bad words because that makes it worse.
True. Don't escalate it.
Yeah.
I guess. I don't know. That just reminded me of like when you're a kid and you're like, Dad, why are you arguing with Mom? And he's like, we're not arguing. We're having a discussion. Like,
You can hear it down the street.
yeah, exactly.
And one more thing, we're kind of getting towards the end of our time, but how do you think distance affects communication? Like the importance or the quality? So like some people, especially right now during the pandemic, are in distance relationships. You know, they might be in quarantine still. There might be lockdowns. They might live in, I mean, maybe you met somebody at college and they moved away and they're in different states. Like, how do you think communication changes once you're in a distance relationship?
I think for it to survive, because it can, I think it can. A lot of times it doesn't, mostly because of bad communication.
Right.
I feel like as long as people are good at communicating, then it can maybe help once you guys are together. Again, I think it's almost a good thing. It's almost a good thing to have that distance, but the good communication kind of makes you grow more fond of each other.
Yeah.
Yeah. The closest experience I have on this is when Lane and I could not see each other for 2 weeks or 3 weeks because of the pandemic when it first started. And I almost died.
Whatever, babe.
Lane, I was
so
about
extra.
to be like, I was about to be like, oh, you come right here and see me today,
Or we're breaking up.
over. I'm kidding.
I didn't know it got to that point.
I'm
Jeez.
kidding. But I'm kidding. But I think it was so hard, because there is that physical part of your relationship that is so essential that even with good communication, you can't replace. And so, I mean, good communication is super important because you want to make sure that the other person knows where you're at and what you're doing and what your plans are. And you want to make sure the other person is okay with still have you in that relationship. I don't have a lot of experience, but I think you do. You kind of had a long distance relationship for a little while, right?
Yeah, there was a girl that I was dating for a while. She's a nice girl. We connected really well when we were together, in person. She did a study abroad in a different country, and so she did a semester in another country. And so I felt good about our relationship. I wanted to keep seeing her, and she wanted to keep seeing me. And so we decided that we were going to try to make it work. And I kind of felt the same way that Patrick said, that, distance relationships can work if you have good communication. And so she went to the other country, and the time zones were super different. And so the only times that we could talk was either early in the morning for me or late at night for her, or the other way around. So I would wake up at sometimes like 4 or 5 in the morning, and then we would video chat for like an hour before I had to go to school and work. And so for her, that was just like the afternoon. But for me, it was like in the morning.
Oh my gosh.
Or she would call me during the day, but it would be like 12 or 1, at night. And so then we would talk for like an hour or something. So, to make a long story short, the relationship did end, but I don't necessarily think it was because of our communication. The distance just kind of made me, I will say me, realize that I didn't necessarily want to continue dating, at least the way that we were doing it. And part of it, I guess part of it was that we weren't together physically, and it was kind of hard to feel connected to her in that way. But I would say that we gave communication the best shot, because we would text when we could, we would video call once or twice a day usually, and we were talking to each other pretty regularly. I tried to be an emotional support for her being in a new place. I would talk to her about things that were going on in my life. We even downloaded this app that allowed you to stream a movie at the same time to each other's phone and call at the same time. So through the one app, we could talk to each other while watching a movie together in real time. And that was something that we tried to do to do something together, even though we were far apart. And what I can say is that it did help. And if you want to make time for somebody, you will make time for somebody.
Oof. Yeah, no, that's true. Because if someone doesn't make time for you, then clearly you're not on their priorities.
Right. I mean, people will make time to do other stuff. So like, why can't they make time?
Oh yeah, no, I'll say I don't have time for stuff, but in reality, I'm playing video games for like 6 hours a day. You know, so yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us, Patrick. Those are some awesome thoughts. And so hopefully we were able to answer some questions and have a good kind of all-around discussion about communication and its importance. If there's something we didn't touch on, let us know and maybe we'll address it in a future episode. I think these are getting better as we go. As always, leave a comment either in our email or DM us on Instagram if there's anything you think we can improve on, any questions you want to ask us. You can send us an email at theyoungcouple20@gmail.com, or you can follow us and send us a DM on Instagram at The Nightings. That's TheGneitings. We'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support in listening to this episode. We love you guys. Thank you for joining us, friend, and we'll catch you in the next episode.